Have you ever heard of the Wesleyan Methodist Church located on East Onondaga Street in Syracuse, New York? Currently, it is a mission restaurant, which is a fitting name because the slaves were on a mission to get their freedom in Canada. The church was a part of the Underground Railroad because they hid slaves in the basement of the church. The basement where slaves hid was dirty, cold, small, and smelled like must and mildew. Would you hide in the basement if it meant your freedom? One of the leaders associated with the church was Luther Lee, an abolitionist who founded the church in 1846. He hid about 30 runaway slaves in the church basement every month. Luther Lee risked his life and his freedom for the freedom of slaves. Another leader, Samuel May, used the church to have a public debate about slavery that lasted 11 nights in 1854. Lastly, Charles Merrick was a white abolitionist who donated stained glass windows so that nobody can see inside the church. These windows were donated in the late 1800s. These abolitionists were willing to sacrifice their freedom for slaves to be free. The Fugitive Slave Law, established in 1851, was a law that meant if you were caught with an escaped slave, you would go to jail or be fined. But this didn't stop Luther Lee, or Samuel May, or Charles Merrick, or Frederick Douglass, or Harriet Tubman from helping escape slaves. This meant they had to be careful and secretive. Regardless of the outcome, the leaders would risk everything for the freedom of slaves. The followers needed leaders in order to be free. The leaders helped the followers by using quilts. The quilts might have had an image of a wrench that meant gather your tools to physically and mentally prepare to escape the plantation. The wagon wheel meant to pack your belongings because you were about to take a long journey. The beard ball meant to head north over the Appalachian Mountains to get to natural resources. In another quilt, the tumbling blocks were only displayed as an indication to pack up and go again. They used these quilts to move along the Underground Railroad. This was a secret for leaders to support people following the Trail of Freedom. In the basement of this church were carvings of unknown faces. But people today had their theories who the faces were of. Some thought the faces were abolitionists, some thought their family members, the slave owners, or the slaves that stayed in the basement. In 1898, there was a fire at the church that ruined some of the carvings in the basement. Now some of the carvings are at the Onondaga Historical Association. In conclusion, the Wesleyan Methodist Church was important because it enabled abolitionists to help slaves get to freedom without anyone knowing. If you were Luther Lee, would you help slaves get to freedom? Would you risk everything he risked?